It was so bad. I washed my hands until they were cracking and bleeding. I went through rolls of paper towel a week, wouldn't touch doorknobs. I would use my shirt to open the door. I would eat food with tissues because I was afraid that my food was going to get contaminated from my hands. It was like a nightmare. I just think that it's so funny that OCD always attaches to the things that are important to you. And it's just crazy how it jumps from one theme to the next. And suddenly like what you were worrying about before isn't important to you anymore. And now your like life is centered and focused around this theme. Came to a point where he was like, I love you, but if we're gonna have like a future together, OCD can't be the forefront of it. And so that was kind of like a big motivation for me to go to therapy and really get my shit together. If I didn't get the help that I got, I would not be where I am today, and I would not have the things in my life that I do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of the Get to Know OCD podcast. My name is Patrick McGrath. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer for NOCD. If you're looking for help for OCD or related conditions, check us out at NOCD.com. That's NOCD.com. We have people waiting to chat with you and get you really set up with a great licensed therapist in your area who's been expertly trained in the treatment of OCD and related conditions. It is another guest today. Yay! I love these days. They're so much fun. One day they bamboozled me and they made me the guest, Alix. That was really weird. But otherwise, I think you're the guest today. So we'll just go with it. Alix Behar, how are you today?
I'm great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm thrilled you're here. I've had a chance to listen to some of your podcasts and hear some of your story. But for those who haven't, maybe could you tell us a little bit about you and why you ended up here today?
Yeah, so I'm Alix. I'm the face behind Recover OCD on Instagram. I shared my story on Instagram, my journey with OCD, and I've met so many people through the community. And I think I would like to say I've come really far in my own journey of OCD. And I just love talking to other people, sharing my story, and hopefully providing some hope for some people who are in a rough spot in their own journey.
Well, that's awesome, and really appreciated that you would do something like that, because there's so many stories to tell, I think, and I'm sure you hear a ton, because once you put a story out, there's no doubt that people will reach out to you and say, I thought I was the only one. I had no idea. What's it like for you to get those messages from people?
It's crazy. I still am so shocked when I get them. I totally relate to that person. That's the reason why I started sharing my story on Instagram, because I felt so alone and I was like, there's nobody who gets what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
But if I share my story and I happen to meet one person who does, it will make me feel so much better and so much less alone. So I always remind people when they message me that they're not alone, that if they're struggling with a specific theme, I guarantee there's somebody else who is too, and you just don't know. Maybe they're not sharing their story, but it definitely provided just so much relief for me when I shared that I was dealing with a certain thing, and people also dealt with it too.
You talked about in one of your podcasts the idea that therapy might have been one of the most difficult but rewarding things that you've ever done. And for people who reach out to you and are kind of on that cusp, but they just say, I don't know if I'm ready. How do you help to motivate people to take that step to finally move forward?
Yeah, I always say that, think of all the things that you really want to do, all your goals in life, all the things you want to experience. For me, if I didn't get the help that I got, I would not be where I am today, and I would not have the things in my life that I do. So I always try to remind people just to focus on their dreams and their goals. And, once they get OCD in the background and they start their recovery journey, things start to open up and things start to get so much better.
How is your life better? How is it different? And how are you living your values instead of what OCD wanted you to live?
My life is so much better than it was, and that's not to say that I don't struggle. I still do every now and then. I just have the tools now. But when I was in my worst during my OCD, everything became so small. I didn't go out. I was in my room all the time. I was always anxious. and I just wasn't living like a fulfilling life. And now that, I've got the tools, I'm in recovery, I'm engaged, I'm getting married next year. And that wouldn't even
Congrats.
be
Wonderful.
possible if it wasn't for my fiance. He encouraged me when I was really struggling, to really, maybe in a nice, but also reminding me, you should really try to work, see a therapist who actually specializes in OCD. And our relationship wasn't doing well while my
Hmm.
OCD was really bad, because it was our OCD, it was relationship focused. So if it weren't for that therapy, like, I wouldn't have him in my life right now. I wouldn't be at the job I'm at. So yeah,
Sure.
so it's just, therapy has opened the door for so many things for me.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think in general, the population doesn't think about the fact that OCD really interferes all that much in your life. I mean, you've got to maybe straighten something or wash your hands, but they don't realize that people have lost relationships and jobs and school over OCD because OCD gets in the driver's seat. And though nobody would want it to be, it becomes the most important thing in your life, even though, again, that's not where you want it to go.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
You even talked about that in your podcast with how OCD interfered with faith for you,
Mm-hmm.
and how I sometimes say this, and I don't mean this in any other way, but in an OCD discussion, of you start to almost feel like you're worshiping OCD instead of your higher power in some way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, that started when I was about 16, and I just think that it's so funny that OCD always attaches to the things that are important to you.
Yeah.
And in that moment of my life, that's when I first became a Christian. And it was like immediately just started having these really scary thoughts about my faith. And it was like, if that didn't get better, there was nothing here for me. That's how, deep and awful OCD was for me. And you're right, you start to worship it. You're like, there's nothing else I can do. And
Yeah.
it just becomes like exactly what it is, a compulsion. Like, you have to
Mhm.
do it, or else you just can't go on living your life, because you just have that anxiety that's like always there.
I've interviewed Ted Witzik on the therapist side of treating scrupulosity, but this is fun now to be on the person who has scrupulosity, has come out on the other end. What
Mhm.
is your relationship with your faith now? And does OCD still try to jump in there once in a while?
It's so much better. I actually wasn't in therapy at the time when I first started struggling with it. So
Hmm.
I didn't even really know what exposure therapy was back then. I'm 27 now. So that was a while ago. But I kind of figured it out myself, and, surrounded myself with good people. And I remember, like, my biggest fear at the time was like committing the unforgivable sin. I was going to hell.
Hmm.
And I like reached out to so many pastors asking for reassurance, and they had never like really heard about OCD, so they didn't really understand. So it left me to kind of navigate it by myself with my family. My parents were really awesome during that time, and, tried to help me in the best way they could. But my faith now is so much stronger, and I usually don't get those kind of thoughts about my faith, God or Jesus anymore. They'll pop up from time to time, but now I just am able to shut it down and be like, oh, I know that's OCD and I don't need to give it attention.
Yeah. And you're right. OCD does attack the things that are important. I don't know that I'd have a job if OCD attacked things people didn't care about, because I don't think they'd be coming, I don't think they'd be coming into therapy for it whatsoever. But it is kind of interesting, because people always will then say, well, why does OCD have to attack that? And
Hmm.
my reply is, well, because exactly what you said, it always goes after things that are important. If it's not important, why would OCD give it the time of day? It's always going to be that, and that importance can change. I mean, you've had different subtypes.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
experienced it in different ways. So you've even seen that suddenly this thing, which yesterday might have been the most important thing in the world, is today no big deal, because this thing now is like,
Yeah.
boom, just skyrocketed up into the world.
Yeah, I think it really has to do with like what's going on also in your life at the time. Um, and that's how it kind of changes and will switch themes. I've dealt with contamination, scrupulosity, ROCD, POCD, everything. And it's just crazy how it jumps from one theme to the next. And suddenly, like you said, that what you were worrying about before isn't important to you anymore. And now your like life is centered and focused around this theme. And like I said, it attacks values. So whatever's like going on in your life at the time. Like for me, like a relationship, OCD attaches to that because it knows that that's such a big point, a big purpose in my life. And it's the same with faith, POCD, every theme that you can experience. It's always just what's really important to you and what your values are.
Alix, thanks for that overview. It was really helpful. Could you give me a little bit more, maybe detailed timeline of how things started, how old you were, and the evolution of it from the beginning through here we are today?
Yeah, so I started experiencing symptoms when I was 13. I
Okay.
got sick from somebody at summer camp, and I got like a stomach bug, and it was like a light switch. From then on, I just started having all these behaviors, like I said, washing my hands, eating with tissues, all of those kind of things. And I kind of did exposure therapy on myself because at the time I wasn't really open to going to therapy.
Hmm.
And so I kind of got better a little bit on my own, and that theme kind of went away until I was 16. And that's when I started dealing with moral scrupulosity because that's when I became a Christian and just having all of those thoughts about God and my faith. At that time, I was just seeing a general therapist, a Christian therapist. So the OCD was never really treated. But, it did provide me some relief at the time, but, it never was actually targeted and treated.
Yeah.
And then I started medication when I was 19. That really, really helped.
Okay.
I got rid of a lot of compulsions, got rid of a lot of the thoughts. And then I went away to college and I started dealing with ROCD, but it never got too bad because I think the medication was really helping. And then it wasn't until my next big flare up would be 3 years ago when I was 21 and 25, sorry. And that's when the ROCD started coming into my relationship and just the cheating OCD, the constantly confessing. And that's when I kind of hit the rock bottom. And I was like, I need to get better. I need to start treating OCD for what it is. And that's when my parents found me a specialist who helped me with the relationship OCD and the other themes that were coming up at the time. And I did that for about like over a year or two. And now I'm just in therapy every 2 weeks, just to help me keep those practices. My therapist now is still a specialized therapist in OCD,
Cool.
so she's great. And yeah, so I'm living a much more fulfilling life now because of therapy.
How do you manage a relationship with OCD? Again, I could talk to all the experts in the world, but I love it when I have a person who has lived that experience. And it doesn't mean relationship OCD, but really just in the aspect of dating and the struggle through, oh, should I go out tonight or should I do the compulsion, or how am I going to hide this from my partner so
Yeah.
they don't know what's going on? Uh, how did you, well, first of all, what did you do? How did you try to be sneaky about it? And what was it like to finally come to terms with, if I'm really going to be in a loving relationship with someone, I have to be totally honest and open with them, and I need them as a partner, not as somebody who's going to help me do compulsions. So I'll
Yeah.
leave it to that.
Yeah, well, I would say with the person I'm with right now, um, my OCD focused around our relationship, and my theme was cheating OCD. So constantly thinking that I cheated on him, if I talked to
Mm-hmm.
another guy, if I had like a thought about someone else. And I started to confess everything to him. And he was really good about it in the beginning, but it slowly broke him down because obviously nobody wants to hear that maybe you found somebody else attractive, or you think, oh my gosh, like what if I cheated by accident? And you're going to your partner and they're like, what are you talking about? How do you not remember if that happened or not? And so over time, it slowly broke him down and it exhausted him. And that's where it came to a point where he was like, you really, like, I love you, but if we're going to have like a future together, OCD can't be the forefront of it. And you really need to work on getting, treatment and trying to lessen all these behaviors that you have. And so that was kind of like a big motivation for me to go to therapy and really get my shit together. Um,
Hmm.
and so he was so great, so compassionate, but OCD just has a way of like sucking the life out of you. And I think people forget it affects family and friends as well. My parents have always been great, but I'm their child. So of course they're never going to be like, oh, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
But my fiance, my boyfriend at the time, he didn't know how to handle it. I mean, if I'm confessing to him every single day and telling him all these thoughts that I'm having, I would be so upset if he was doing that to me, but I
Sure.
couldn't stop doing it. I would be crying hysterically in my room, like, oh my gosh, if I don't tell him, I'm a liar and our whole relationship is a lie. And so now we're in a really, really good point. And even like a couple weeks ago, I kind of confessed and I hadn't done that in so long. And he was like, he said something funny. He was like, "You're recover OCD. You know how you have all the tools that you have to get better. You know what you have to do, and like I love you and I'm here for you. But this is OCD talking." And
Yeah.
so he's really has a nice and like gentle way of keeping me in check and reminding me that I know how to get better. I know how to handle these thoughts now.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah. And got to be empowering too, knowing you have someone to walk alongside of you through all of this, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. He's been amazing, and I can't imagine, not having him in my life. So I didn't get treatment just because of him. I did it because I wanted to better myself, but I'm happy that he pushed me and that my family pushed me to really just do the thing.
How was that journey of therapy? Because there's a lot of people, unfortunately, who first go into therapy and meet a general therapist who's going to give them safety behaviors and tell them to snap a rubber band on their wrist or do these other things. But eventually you did find great
Yeah.
treatment.
Mhm.
What was it like to go through therapy until you finally found the therapy, the
Mhm.
things you really
Yeah.
needed?
It was exhausting. I mean, I've been in therapy since I was 13 years old. It started with emetophobia, and they thought it was just a phobia. And once I, faced it, I would get over it. But obviously, that wasn't really channeling the real problem there because it was OCD all along. But I've had some really great therapists who were really helpful at the time. But looking back, so many of them reassured me when what I was so clearly was dealing with OCD. So it really prolonged my treatment for a really long time. And it was just, I always just felt so exhausted, like every session, because I was like, I feel like there's still something there that is just not getting better. And it wasn't until I was 19 that I finally found a psychiatrist who diagnosed me. And he's like, I don't know how nobody else has diagnosed you. Like, I've been to multiple psychiatrists and therapists. And he's like, I don't know how no one has diagnosed you when you're so clearly dealing with OCD.
Hmm.
So he helped me start my medication journey, which I didn't want to do at all, but it just came to the point where I needed to try it because my life was just, it was so, OCD was sucking the life out of me. And then it wasn't until probably 3 years ago when I was having the problems with my fiance that we found a place. I'm so grateful to my parents that they found a place that specialized in OCD treatment.
Hmm.
Like I said, it was the hardest thing I ever had to do, exposure therapy. It was so
Sure.
difficult, but it saved my life. And like I always want to tell people that it will give you the freedom back. And so I'm really grateful for the place I went to and my therapists and my psychiatrists.
And just for people listening, emetophobia is a fear around throwing up or other people throwing up. And there are some people listening to this today who will go, "Oh, I get that." Yeah. And then there's other people who will look at you, Alix, and go, "Why is that? What's the big deal about that?"
Hmm.
For those who don't get it, or maybe even any kind of OCD or anxiety, maybe they've just not had the experience. Maybe there are some of those lucky people who just, they don't get anxious
Yeah.
about much of anything. What was it like for you when this clicked, that suddenly your life was turned upside down out of this fear, which you could look back now and go, makes no sense, but at the moment felt so amazingly real about
Mhm.
throwing up. Why, and what was happening?
Yeah, it's even now, I'm just like, I don't understand, like you said, why that was such a big fear.
Hmm.
But at the time, it was so bad. I washed my hands until they were cracking and bleeding. I went through rolls of paper towel a week, wouldn't touch doorknobs. I would use my shirt to open the door. I would eat food with tissues because I was afraid that my food was going to get contaminated from my hands. I wouldn't go out to dinner because I was scared I was getting food poisoning. So I ate like two things and that was it. And it was like a nightmare to
Hmm.
be around me, my family. Like I said, OC just sucks the life out of everything. And my behaviors were really affecting the people around me.
Hmm.
And that's what kind of got me to the point where I was like, this isn't just affecting me anymore. And obviously I'm suffering and that's valid, but it's affecting other people too. And I that's where I kind of was like, I really need to, get the right help because I don't want that to be the biggest part of my life. Like I don't want people to remember me because of my compulsions, and I want people to get to know the real me. And that wasn't the real me. OCD was just making my life so small.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a testament to treatment that we could talk about this now and you're not running off screen going, right.
And I've
But
thrown that multiple times since,
uh,
and here I am. I'm still alive. I'm good.
and yet back in those days, just the word would have probably made you panic. I'm going to bet. Right.
Yeah, I remember I would be in school and I would literally text my dad all day saying, I just touched this. I'm going to get sick.
Mm,
And then I would count the days that went by and I would be like, okay, I think I'm out of the window now and I've made
yeah.
it. So it was just crazy. All these little behaviors that I did now, I can't imagine doing them. They would be so exhausting.
Hmm. Tell me more about that. It has to be exhausting dealing with this all day when you have a relentless thing in the back of your head throwing doubt and insecurity bombs at you and uncertainty statements all day long. Uh, where did the energy come from, do you think, to keep trying to satisfy the OCD? And what was the breaking point where you were like, I can't do this anymore?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think. I would say that like I said, it sucked a lot out of my life,
Hmm.
and I've always been a very anxious person ever since I was little. And I'm pretty sure like anxiety runs in my family. And so, um, like I had a great childhood, I had great parents. So
Sure.
I don't
Hmm.
think like, they did anything, that made my anxiety worse. I think I was just a kid who had anxiety. And then over time it spiraled. But like I said, I got to the breaking point when it was just taking up so much of my life and I wasn't doing things that my friends were doing because I was so scared of going out and being around germs. I couldn't have a job for a while because I was so anxious, and this littlest things would make me so like have breakdowns. And so I wasn't, I had to really focus on treatment from 2021 to 2022 was where I really got my life together and I really took exposure therapy seriously. And then finally, like, in 2022, I got a job and now I'm like fully functioning, and I can manage all these anxieties and stress that life throws at me because I have those tools. So that was kind of the breaking point when I just kind of felt like I wasn't doing anything and I was at home all the time and just like wallowing away.
Hmm. How's your life different now? What do you do today?
So I work for a nonprofit in New Jersey. I work with youth, trying to just kind of help them make good choices and stay on the right path, stay away from substances and alcohol. And I absolutely love it. And a big part of that is mental health too. So I get to share, different coping skills and just what we know about mental health, and be like a safe space for, like maybe like a high schooler who's coming and is dealing with something of their own. By no means I'm not a therapist or any counseling,
Yeah.
but I'm always an ear to listen for any mental health struggle that someone is going through. And I'm happy I get to be that for these kids.
I can only imagine that work today, how difficult that must be with the just plethora of vape items available for children and teens, and how rampant it is for them to have access to it. It must be
Yeah,
really difficult.
it's crazy because I've never been a vapor. I've never been someone who's into, substances or anything like that because I was
Hmm.
always told by my parents that was bad and,
Yeah,
would derail my life. But there's just like I've learned so much from my job that vaping affects mental health so much, and the people
100%.
who vape are
Hmm.
more stressed and anxious than the people who don't vape. And so many people think vaping, they do it as a stress reliever, which is crazy because they have no idea that it's actually making it worse. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
You you didn't have to go out into the world and tell everybody your story. That no one forced you to do it. Why did you?
I think there were two reasons. I think one, I just wanted so badly to find at least one person who was struggling with the same thing I was feeling because I had no one really in my life who understood OCD. And so I felt really alone. And I would follow a bunch of OCD pages on Instagram for my personal account. And I would see this community and I would be like, I want that so badly. So one day I just decided to create an Instagram account and post like my daily life and how I was dealing with OCD, the thoughts I was having, it's the compulsions I was having. And I got a message, and somebody was like, I deal with that exact same theme that you do. And I remember I just felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders, knowing that somebody had that exact specific theme that I did. And I realized that I could be that person for other people. And I just think sharing your story is so powerful. You never know who you're helping. You never know who you're helping feel less alone. And so that's why I did it. And, I've got to meet so many cool people on Instagram because of people who have shared their stories with me. And so it's been really nice, full circle.
There are people out there, and we kind of started at this, but I do want to go a little bit more in depth, who think, well, therapy, yeah, it worked for her, but I don't think it's going to work for me. I think there's something different about me. I'm wondering if you had those thoughts when you were searching out therapy also.
Oh my gosh, I had those thoughts all the time. It's not going
Okay.
to work for me. My
Hmm.
theme is different. I'm the exception. And it's funny because I talk to so many people now who say the same thing to me.
Hmm.
And it's so easy to feel that way when, OCD is in the forefront because
Hmm.
that's exactly what it wants you to believe. And, different therapies work for different people. I never want to say that, like, what I'm doing is going to 100% help somebody, or the medication that I'm on is going to help someone because it's so unique to everyone. But just, from learning and trying different therapies, exposure therapy is the gold standard treatment for OCD. I'm pretty sure, it has the best success rate. It's done wonders for my life. I've talked to so many people who say that it's helped them. And I think there's just something really freeing of not being held back by your fears anymore
Hmm.
and being able to say, like, I can do these hard things, I can face my fears, and they don't have to have that hold on me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to be amazing to be able to look at where you were and to see where you are now. I'm assuming back in the throes of OCD, there wasn't much of a future you saw in your
Yeah,
life.
100%. Yeah. I thought that, like most people, that this was going to be something that was like this for the rest of my life. And it was never going to get better because I was always going to have this. It's chronic. Um, but I've learned through therapy that just because something's chronic doesn't mean that it has to be bad forever. And, if you do the work, you can fulfill all of your dreams and goals. And it's just crazy looking back on my life a couple of years ago and all these amazing things that have happened to me because I decided to work on myself and start that journey. And I'm so grateful just for recovery and for everything.
What do you hope for the future?
I think my biggest goal, and this has been my biggest goal since, I figured out I had OCD at 16, is that I just want to help people,
Hmm.
especially with OCD, because I know how much stigma there is around OCD. I still hear it every day in my life. Oh, I'm so OCD. I like things this way. Or, I'm color coordinated and I'm so OCD. And there's nothing more that grinds my gears. And I know how everybody who has actual OCD feels that way. So I just want to start the conversation and, um, tell people what it really is and how it's different for everybody, but it's not something that we enjoy or that we want. And even like years ago, I would never talk about this with my family or share stuff on my personal account because I was so ashamed. And I was like, these people
Hmm.
are going to think I'm crazy if I tell them the things that the thoughts that I'm having and the things that I'm doing. And I don't feel that way anymore because I know I'm not crazy. I know, it's a mental illness, and um, it just some it happens to some people. And I just want to continue to share my story and, share other people's stories. And just my biggest thing is I just want people to know that there's like so much life left to experience, and no matter how much time OCD is taken from you, like you still have time to do all the things that you want to do.
One of the things that can be the hardest is accepting the fact that you're not going to get the answers that OCD wants. OCD demands a 100% certainty. And there are times that people become frustrated with me. Maybe it's something I've said on a webinar or done in a podcast, because I've talked about the fact that I cannot predict the future and I don't know what's going to happen. If I treat you for, say, hit and run OCD, and you've never run someone over and you have no desire to, but you're afraid of what if I do, and you're dealing with it now, I can't then at the end of therapy say to someone, and now please know this, you will never hit anyone with your car ever for the history. I can't do that. And that frustrates people a lot because they still sometimes, even at the end of treatment, are really wanting that 100% absolute answer. How do you live life not satisfying what OCD wants? Because I'm going to bet you still get those pings in the back of your head now and then for, oh, wouldn't it be great just to have certainty about this?
All the time, and that was the
Yeah.
hardest thing I had to accept when I started exposure therapy.
Okay.
My therapist saying to me, "You might cheat on your boyfriend, like, who knows, like, it might happen one day."
Or
And
your husband after you get married, right?
I'd be like, "Are you kidding me?"
Hmm.
Like, I wanted
Hmm.
to walk out of that session and be like, "I'm done."
Yeah.
But exposure therapy, if anything, has taught me so many good skills on how to deal with uncertainty, and it did not happen overnight. It took months for things to finally click. I would say probably like 6 or 7 months until I was able to really start being okay with that. Even like a couple weeks ago when it was Thanksgiving, I was freaking out over the weather, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to drive home because my car is going to be snowed in. And I was thinking about it over and over and over and over again. I kept asking my dad, what if this happens? And he's like, I don't know, it might, because it's supposed to snow and I can't tell you what's going to happen.
Hmm.
It still gets so annoying, but I just take a deep breath and I'm like, you know what? I can control what I can control. The rest is going to happen either way, and I'll just have to see what happens when it happens, and I'll deal with it then.
Hmm. Yeah. Because interestingly, you've lived 99+% of your life without certainty.
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
OCD just said you need it for these 3 or 4 things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And I always say that to people too. I'm like, you got up this morning and you walked across the street, and you could have got hit by a car, or you may not have waken up this morning at all,
There you
and
go. Yep.
here you are. So we don't think those things are certain or uncertain, and we just kind of, focus on the things that are important to us in that moment.
I sometimes say to people with OCD, you can spend the rest of your life sitting next to your tombstone when you're going to be 6 feet under it, wondering when that's going to happen. Or you could live your life and on the day of your death, arrive at your tombstone and say, well, that was fun. It sounds like you're doing the latter now, but maybe you were doing the former before.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like I said, I would recommend exposure therapy for anyone because I just said I think it teaches you such good skills on how to handle discomfort, how to do the things that scare you, and even like, even my friends who don't have OCD, I'll tell them like some of the tools I've learned in therapy when they're worrying about something.
Hmm.
And so it's just like I said, it's still hard, and I still get sucked in sometimes because
Sure.
that's OCD, but I just have these tools now that I will take with me for the rest of my life and will be able to help me navigate these thoughts and these feelings.
Yeah, and for those of you not as familiar with that, it's two things: exposure, where we have you be with whatever the thoughts or the images or urges, the OCD things are, and the response prevention. The key component of the entire experience is not doing the compulsion, not giving in to safety behaviors, allowing for that discomfort to be there, and learning I can handle it. I may not like it, it may not be comfortable, but I can handle it. Alix, you've described already today what it was like to feel as if you couldn't handle it and you had to answer it. And now much more confidence in your life with the ability to be able to handle whatever comes your way.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm excited now that I still have these, these tools that I know will work and will take me for the rest of my life.
If I gave you the floor, what's the advice you want to give to people? What do you want to tell them? And, have at it. It's yours for a bit.
Yeah, I think for anyone who is maybe struggling in the really deep pits and times in their life with OCD, I think, like I said before, you still have your whole life ahead of you. Like you have so many good things to still do, so many things to experience. You're not the exception, even though OCD makes you feel that way. There's probably so many people who are going through the same thing and just haven't shared their story. And I think, it's so cliche, but it does get better. And there are things out there like therapy that can really help you and help you navigate these feelings. And it's really scary, but just reminding yourself that you can do those hard things and, you're a resilient human being and things will get better and I think there was this one quote and it's like you've handled, like you said, everything that's happened to you in your life. Like you have a good track record. And so I think just the biggest thing is that you're not alone. It's very easy to feel that way, but I promise you that there's somebody out there who is experiencing the same thing that you are.
It's fantastic. I'm really happy that we got to have this discussion because there's nothing to me more motivating than people who have really taken life by the horns, right? And have just decided, yeah, I've got this thing and it's with me and it's going to be with me for the rest of my life, but it's also not going to drive the rest of my life and I'm going to take charge. And yeah, OCD is going to flare up on you once in a while, right? And probably just like the kids you work with, they're going to have urges or cravings for substances throughout their life, but it doesn't mean that they have to use them. And it also doesn't mean that a person with OCD has to give in to compulsions.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really easy to feel like you have to obey OCD's compulsions and the urges and the thoughts. But I think every time that you choose not to give into a compulsion, you get stronger. And I've learned that it becomes easier the more you do it. It's like practice. And just like anything else, you just have to keep doing it until it gets a little bit easier.
I always say practice makes routine. The more you practice it, the more you'll develop that routine. But that can be for compulsions too, because compulsions can become your routine if you practice those. So you've got to choose what you're practicing. You're going to do compulsions. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, Alix, I want to thank you for being here today. I really do appreciate it. And I think your message is going to really resonate with a lot of folks. And where can people find you and see some of the stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Recover OCD. That's where I'm most active. So, if anybody wants to check out my page and chat, I'm always on and I love meeting people. So
awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, Alix.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, it was a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you make more impact on the OCD community. I think it'll be awesome.
Thank you so much. And also just a quick shout out to NOCD for being like the most amazing organization and helping people with OCD.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Well, you heard it there. The most amazing organization for OCD. If you're looking for help for OCD or related conditions, check us out at NOCD.com. We'll place you with an expertly trained therapist in your state to be able to work with you or wherever you're at, because we do work in the UK and Canada and Australia. And one of my favorite things, we even do what we call our NOCD 411 sessions. If you are a friend or a family member or even a person with OCD or related conditions, but you're not quite ready for therapy, but you want to talk to someone and just kind of test the waters and see what's up, do a 411 session with us. It's not a therapy session, but we'd be happy to give you lots of information and tell you about what things might look like and how to help a family member or a friend who might have OCD as well. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today. If you did, subscribe to the NOCD YouTube channel, and you can get all the episodes of the Get to Know OCD podcast there or anywhere where you get your favorite podcasts. Thanks for joining us today once again on the Get to Know OCD podcast. Alix, thank you for being here today. Such a joy. And we'll see all of you again soon.